We are super excited to have you on here. I'm, as I said, Archita. I've been in Dusseldorf, lots of different spaces, lots of different. Med tech is kind of is my day job. I was not prepared to talk about this, but med tech is where I've spent the last 20 years, 18 to 20 years. And then over the past year and a half, I've moved into private equity and not for profit spaces. And my work really accelerated after a lived experience of bullying and harassment in the workplace. So while I sat on ERGs and I had all these like fun chats about how we're going to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion for years on end, when I finally had that lived experience, I realized when I chose to have a voice, I was very quickly silenced. And so then that's
Yep.
kind of become my guiding light, as Olivia would say, to kind of steer it forward to ensure everybody, people moving forward, like women, especially women of color in the workplace, know how to thrive in a situation such as this as they're making career transitions. And through that is where I found your work, because there were a lot of people in the
Okay.
community I am in that started posting your trailer, and I was like so curious. And then boom, I was like, yes, these are my people. So that's me. I lived in the US from India. I'm an immigrant, moved to the US and then moved over to Germany. Have a family of three humans, little humans here, with my husband, who's Caucasian, who's white. And that's going to be some of the part of the discussion as well that I would like.
Yes, I was looking at Fritz, the last name. I was
Not
looking
an
at
Indian
Fritz.
last name. No, exactly. No. So we'll move over to Miss Olivia.
Yeah, thanks, Archita. So I am Olivia Cream, and I have a little bit different of a experience than Archita has. So Archita and I used to work at the same company, which is how we met. But my career path, so I'm actually an immigrant as well. I'm Jamaican. My family migrated here when I was very small. So before I was 9 years old, and then I joined them kind of permanently from Jamaica when I was nine. I am a veteran, so I went to the Coast Guard Academy, graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. And then, as you can imagine, there was not a ton of diversity in that space. So as I went out into the field, I was an only, and only in the engineering space made it even
Hmm.
more isolating. So there were definitely some experiences there. And then from in 2012, I transitioned out of the military and into the corporate space. While I haven't necessarily had the same experiences with workplace bullying and harassment that Archita has, I think a lot of my experience was just around how do you positively navigate this corporate space, and how do you figure out exactly what it is that you want so that you can design a life and live the way you want to live. So, as Arshita shared your work with me, I found it so fascinating, because Archita and I were, Regina, we are opposite ends of the spectrum. Archita is the everything is great. People are typically, really good. They're good people in the world, while I'm on the other end, like things are not great. Like things are, and you just have to control what you can control and navigate your life. So I think this discussion is going to be absolutely amazing for us as we come at things from two very different perspectives.
Well, you guys are just like me and Syra, only reversed.
Ah,
Only reversed. So I totally get it. What I like about me and Syra working together is we really like each other. We really like each other. And she believes that her responsibility with having more power on the racism uh, platform than I do is to use her voice to call out shit. So Syra gave me my voice, and I gave her don't give a fuck. Don't care what you think. Don't care, So we are a great team, and we love working together. And I think people aren't expecting to see an Asian person and a Black person together. So It totally takes them off guard, and it takes them off guard because we are reversed. We're going to be doing some work with a company, and Syra interviewed with the DEI team, which was a black man, a black woman, and an Asian woman. And she said that they didn't want to have me because they said, we don't want another angry black woman. And Syra goes, time out, you guys, you got it wrong. I'm the angry one. Regina is like so mellow and cool and laid back because I just don't give a fuck. I just don't.
But I think that's where Olivia is very similar. She doesn't give a fuck. I am like, why the fuck are we not giving a fuck? We should care. And so we really let's dive into it. I want to give a little bit a little introduction to our listeners about you, Regina, if that's okay. I took a bit of a
Oh,
bio
absolutely.
from a few different places, and then we'll dive right into this particular topic, because Olivia and I have two different opinions after we watched Deconstructing Karen. We want to debate this. So we're so excited on the Embracing Only podcast to have one of this powerhouse couple, is what I will call Regina Jackson and Saira Rao. And Regina is with us here today. And I'm going to read the mission that built their that founded their race to dinner concept, and it goes like this: a world free of white supremacy, caste, patriarchy, misogyny, all the isms, all the phobias and hate. A world where all of us human beings have value, dignity, respect, and all we need to live how we choose. Liberation. That is the mission of Race to Dinner. And we're so thrilled of the work that both you and Sahara are doing to truly take this mission forward in one of the most refreshing and exciting ways, in my opinion, because you are rattling people up, and that's the only way we're going to wake up. Regina Jackson was born in Chicago in 1950 and remembers an America where everything was in black and white. Burned into her memory are the beatings and horrific treatment of civil rights workers throughout the South. The Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner murders, the murder of Viola Lizzou, I hope I'm
Luizzo. Luizzo.
Luizzo, thank you. The murder of Martin Luther King Jr., and the murders of President John Kennedy and his brother Robert. The violence perpetrated on innocent people going about their lives by white people. It is these memories that drive Regina to push for real change in America, which is why she co founded Race to Dinner. She's also an education advocate and a proprietor of Action Jackson Realty. And Race to Dinner has now taken a whole other form with Deconstructing Karen, a documentary that people can watch anywhere, and also their book, which I devoured over the holidays on audiobook, by the way. And I could see the mellow and the let's go get them side of both of your voices as you all shared that story. And I would highly recommend everyone go get a copy, irrespective of where you fall in that color spectrum. White Women, Everything You Already Know About Your Racism and How to Do Better, a guide to start unlearning. Welcome to the Embracing Only podcast, Regina.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much. I'm sorry Syra couldn't be with us.
Not a problem. We'll have to get you all together or see you all in person or something, because we're just excited. So we're going to start with the just where we kind of entered into our introduction, essentially. So Olivia, I'll actually turn it over to you to kind of share how we both approached the documentary as we stepped away and deconstructed it for ourselves.
Yeah, Regina, so I will just open up with asking you a question. So, since both of us are kind of similar in the way that we don't really internalize a whole lot, right?
That's right.
You're kind of control your controllables. You don't really get yourself worked up. Now, when I watched Deconstructing Karen, I will tell you, I was uncomfortable. And I said that to Archita. I was like, wow. I actually used the words, and I'm kind of ashamed myself, but I was like, I feel like this is aggressive. I said those words
What?
to Archita.
That we were aggressive, that Syra and I were aggressive.
No, not that you two were aggressive, just the environment in general just felt very charged, right? And I
And that's
twitched,
how we
but
work.
Yes. And so there was this uncomfortability that I had to sit with and really think to myself, okay, why am I so uncomfortable here? What is it that is making me so uncomfortable? And so the question that I have for you is, if your mission, right, is to
Mhm,
wake people up, and
mhm,
to how I interpret the mission is really to change hearts and minds, to give people
mhm.
some perspective as we march towards this ideal state where people treat each other fairly, everybody has equity in terms of opportunities, etc., and people are just respectful, right? Like, just point blank, we're just respectful to each other. How does the process facilitate that?
Okay. Let me say a couple of things. First of all, like I said, I've been a Black person in this body for 72 years. Okay. Um, as Cyrus says, has niceism, being nice stopped racism to this point? No. Okay. So, we don't know what to do to resolve it, but what we do know is what we've been doing hasn't worked. Okay. So we're coming at it from a different perspective. For years, Black people have had to walk around white people's comfort. If it made white people uncomfortable, we didn't say it. If it made white people uncomfortable, we didn't do it. If white people flinched, we backed off. We're done with that. We are done with that. You know what? There is no change without, there is no growth without change, and there is no change without pain. White people have to get uncomfortable enough to want to change something. And that's what we're trying to do. Make them uncomfortable with their status quo. Put it back on them. Y'all created racism, you change it. Get uncomfortable and make changes. That's the only way we make changes. If it becomes uncomfortable enough for us to stay the same.
So let me now, and now I know Archita has a different perspective, and I have one last question before I kick it back to you, Archita. So with that mission in mind, Regina, do you really truly believe that by giving people this type of experience, it's truly going to change racism?
Our our thought is, if one or two, three, four people come out of there and are committed to doing the work, then we have been successful. And we have a whole online network on Mighty Network. And these women are joining every day. They're wanting to do the work. It's open to all women, white, Black, Asian, whatever. And what it is, a wonderful community. See, white people don't really have community. How they grow up is competing with each other for everything. So they don't really have community. So we're trying to help them build community around this work. What does that look like? It looks like them helping each other to overcome the fear that white people have for losing white social status and white, I can't think of the word, coming together as white people. And they have a big fear around that. And that's generally why they don't speak up, because they don't want to lose white social status and coming together as white people. So we are seeing it. We are seeing it.
Interesting. Okay.
I love it. I'm going to clap all day long about it because I was just jumping off my seat and I was like, yes, get more in the face of this real problem. And I think that's what deconstructing Karen did for me, was bring out of my body the words I wanted to say out loud to some of my dearest and closest white colleagues and family, because I'm married into an American family that is all white.
White.
And anytime I bring up anything that I'm experiencing, tears. I don't need tears. I need allyship. And there's this TV show I was sharing with Olivia, and it's a binge show on Netflix. It's called Ginny and Georgia. And Ginny is a Black girl who is the daughter of a white woman. And the first season doesn't tackle with this. Her mom's, it's a whole complicated scenario. But what the the TV show does a really phenomenal job of in the second season is the girl starts reckoning with how she should not be responsible for educating people on her blackness. She should not be responsible for educating people on being comfortable with who she is. And she stands up for herself in a class. And then her white friends, one of her best friends, runs out of class and is like, Ginny, I didn't know you felt that way. And Ginny's response to her was, you see me every day being in this uncomfortable situation. How did you not see it? She's like, oh, what can I do? I'm so sorry. Can we hug it out and whatever? And she's like, no, go do something about it. I don't need to tell you, and don't put the onus on me to tell you how you're going to fix it. And eventually they fix it. I share this story because deconstructing Karen is kind of like that wake up call to all of our dear white colleagues and friends, is that it's your turn now to go figure out and do the work to do something. And that's just the beginning, I feel. And for those who are uninformed of race to dinners, if you could just share a little bit about the concept
Um,
and how it's evolved, it would be fabulous.
Syra ran for office against a long-term Democratic congressperson in 2018. And Syra's whole platform was anti-racism. Okay. So every time she would talk, and she talked about, she actually said, white people and you're racist. And, white women would lose their minds and they'd line up around the corner. She'd always have a line of white women wanting to meet with her. And what they all wanted to say is, not me. I'm not racist. So Syra did this because she was courting votes. She paid for breakfast, lunch, dinner, cocktails, and then, of course, babysitters. She had 2 young children. So a former white woman friend, when you get the nonsense, cut them out. A former white woman friend came to me and said, I'm done with Syra. She hates white people, but if you can get her to go lunch with me, I'd really like that. So I went to Syra. I was working on her campaign, and she said, I'm not doing that anymore. But if your friend wants to have a dinner and invite some of her white lady friends and you do it with me, she said, I'll do that. So we did a couple of those, and we looked at each other and we said, Syra, Regina, let's start a business. We'll call it Race to Dinner, and they can pay us to have these conversations. And that's how we got started.
I love that. I love
So
that.
interesting.
Because why give away for free? What is this? What is
It's
this?
work.
Yes, it is
It's
work.
work. Now, it's not emotional for me when I say I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck about what people think, okay, about me. As a matter of fact, my husband, bless his heart, he says to me the other day, Regina, and he wanted to say him, but he was afraid to say him. He goes, people think you're crazy. And I go, I don't care. And he goes, that's why they think you're crazy. I'm like, I don't care. I don't care what they think. And it just frees you. It frees you to be your authentic self. It frees you to tackle these hard issues. It frees you to make a difference. So, I'm good with, I don't care.
Yeah, Regina, I think you said a ton there, and I agree with you. You cannot, especially when we've been walking around in these bodies our entire life, you cannot give away your power by being concerned with what somebody else thinks of you. And I mean, nobody, not your family,
That's
not
right.
your
That's
friends,
right.
not your enemies, like no one. You need to be
Nobody. Yeah.
so solid in who you are and what you bring to the table that you are unconcerned with what anybody else thinks. So
And
I
that is it,
100%.
Olivia. That's it on the nutshell. I know who I am. I know who I am. So it doesn't make any difference what anybody else thinks of me. And, I think we have work to do too. I had my 84-year-old aunt over for Christmas Eve dinner, and she said, I don't like those gay people showing affection in public. I said, well, how does that harm you? She couldn't come up with an answer. I said, okay, you don't get to be homophobic in this house. Real simple.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
I love that you shared that story because I think, Archita and I feel like we live parallel lives. My husband is also white. And he comes from an Irish family. We met in the military. And so we have some common foundational values.
Mhm.
But something that we always seem to get sideways on, right? When we visit each other's families, there's a dramatic difference in the way that the family dynamics are set up. And so in my family, in Jamaica, we're Jamaicans, so we're passionate people anyways, right? We have no problem debating, checking each other when necessary. Of course, you still need to be hyper respectful to the elders, right? So that you're
That's right.
not exactly going to check grandpa, right? Like grandpa's going to be grandpa.
That's right.
But there's this dynamic. And then on his side of things, it's like topics will come up and he'll just look at me and be like, don't you do it. Don't you do it. I know what you're getting ready to do. Don't you do it. And so there's this anxiety about confronting or asking questions like, why do you believe that? How did you get there? Why do you feel this? Right? There's this resistance to asking those questions to understand how people got to whatever conclusion that is unfavorable that they've gotten to. So it is very interesting. And this brings me back to my point. I think why I'm so fascinated with your work is I truly don't believe that we can change people. When you have lived a particular way, right? And Archita's going to laugh because this is where we fundamentally disagree, right? If you are who you are and you have a belief that has been supported by your lived experiences. And now here we come into your life as an adult saying, hold on, like this stuff that you think is not right, it's not good. Let me give you a different experience. We are trying to undo all the things that they know
Unlearning.
to be true over the course of their
Yep.
entire life.
Right.
How likely is that to actually happen? Because we know our brains just look to
Let
validate
me
our
let me
opinion.
tell you, Olivia, prior to now, I've been doing this work for 4 years. We started Race to Dinner 4 years. Prior to 2 months ago, I would have agreed with you. I would have been, yeah, girl, you're right.
Wow.
I have
Okay.
seen a change. I have personally seen a change. And I'm a Capricorn, so I'm stubborn as hell, and I'm very intuitive about people. I just know. So I have seen over the last 2 months, and I've said it out loud to my team, to Syra, to Patty Ivans, our director, I am seeing people change. And I don't know what it is, but I personally am seeing it. And I am so, so thankful. White people, they're doing the work. I don't know if you follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn.
LinkedIn,
You
yes.
should,
Yes.
because dozens of white women, and we even just had a white man this week,
Yes,
are
I saw it.
buying
Post.
books.
Yes.
They're sending it to their friends. They're having discussions. They're having book clubs. So they're doing the work. And, this is what I believe about life. We are here to grow, to evolve, to do the inner work. So when we say that people aren't going to change, we're denying them and we're not giving them the grace to evolve. When I met my husband, I was a firm supporter of the death penalty. Now I know nobody's being murdered but us. So, I have evolved from that. So I believe that we do evolve. And that's what life is about, doing the inner work. You have to be willing to hurt. You have to be willing to look yourself in the mirror, and you have to be willing to to do the work to resolve that. And we're asking white people to unlearn white supremacy and racism. And as you do it, take your friends, your families, your coworkers, take them with you. And we're seeing great results.
I love that.
I love that you shared that because Olivia, there is hope in humanity. I share this because I think that was our fundamental difference after watching the movie, where I was just like, yes, now this is going to get people to want to do the work. But this is where I struggle a little bit because I do follow you religiously on LinkedIn, and my concern is, a lot of women, white women, and I see a couple of the white men had like purchased some books, sent it to friends,
Hmm.
but the women were like, I read this book, and I'm like, are they waiting to get a cookie handed out to them or a hand
We
clap?
don't give cookies.
No, and I know you're
We
very
don't
clear
give
about that
cookies.
in the book.
Hmm.
But this is the thing, is that, when you're saying the last couple of months there's change happening, how do we take it from that book club discussion of like, wow, okay, I read it to be like, oh yes, I've read Angela Davis's race class, blah blah blah. So therefore now I can speak confidently about race. To I'm doing the work to every day deconstruct my, or like go on my anti-racism journey.
That's what we say. It's do you.
Mm.
Deconstruct yourself and share your changes with other people. You know, you can't change anybody but yourself. So we all have to do the inner work. And that's what it is, undoing your own white supremacy. And when people see you and look at you and see the changes, they'll be inspired. And we all have a circle of influence. People will be inspired. They'll go, oh, look at Archita. Oh, look at Olivia. I want to do what they're doing. I want to be where they're at.
So that's interesting. So my journey with my own anti-racism journey started in the summer of 2019. I was like 38 weeks pregnant, about to pop a baby, and I was like shuffling last minute in a department store, and there was we were kicking off this podcast. It used to be called the 906, which is the area code of one of the area codes of Michigan, which is my ode to that
Okay.
community that accepted me as an only many years ago. And I was working with a lady who's Afro Caribbean, who watched a Bollywood movie, and I was in this department store, and I was on a call, like shuffling around, and she's like, we were talking through social media launch of the podcast, and she's like, Leslie was like, Archita, I'm really curious, are Indians racist? And I was like, what are you talking about, Leslie? That's just and mind you, I went through college. Like I look back and I'm ashamed of myself, but I know now what that looked like. Microaggressions towards um, especially my African brothers, because I was in engineering as well, like Olivia, electrical engineering,
Yeah.
and they would always ask me, why do I not date black men? And I never dated anybody because I had this whole other theory, Olivia, always. It's a long story for another day, but I just don't want to date because I was going to marry an Indian guy, blah, 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 all this crap. And then when I ended up dating my husband, they were like, I can't believe it. You told us you'd not date anybody. And that microaggression reminded me when Leslie watched this Bollywood movie and asked me the following question. Priyanka Chopra was in the movie. She goes out to party at a night out, comes back, and all her friends are like, oh, Priyanka, who were you with, blah blah blah. And one of the friends says, oh, luckily she was with the white guy and not with the black guy, thankfully. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have laughed at that. I have laughed at that as a kid, sitting with my family, because I just thought it was the thing not even thing to do. And at that moment, I'm so glad she asked me that question, because if someone had not asked me that damn question or any question related to that, I
You
would
would
have
have never.
I would have never seen my own tie to white colonist colonialism and
Well,
white
Syra is
supremacy.
so wonderful about that. Syra goes, I'm anti black, and all Asians are anti black. And I go, and black people know it. Okay,
Yeah.
we know it. So let's just all quit pretending and tell the truth. And she says, as Asians, we are raised to assimilate to what?
White culture.
Whiteness,
Yeah.
certainly not blackness. Nobody assimilates to blackness. And Cyrus says she was a white woman for 40 years before she discovered that she wasn't white. And when we do these talk bats, it's so wonderful. At the when we show deconstructing Karen, she'll say, okay, all you Asian people in the audience, they know you're not white, right? You know
Yes.
they know. So, she's able to put humor in it, but she tells the truth. And the last story she told, we were flying home from filming, no, we were in Canada, and sitting next to her was an Indian grandmother wearing her sari, not speaking English. And Syra talks about her own racism when she thought, damn, can't you even speak English?
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, we all have that. We have to tell the truth. We have to be honest about it. And that's what we bring to the table. Let's just all quit lying. We know, you white people, keep all those guns so you can protect yourself from us. We know. So y'all need to quit lying and fess up.
But I think that's the crux of it, right? We've got to own, and we have to speak it out loud. Because
Yep.
speak it out loud, because my sister and I were talking about how we'd make fun of my dad's accent. all the time. To this day, that man taught himself English. He put himself through college and everything. And to this day, we make fun of him because he's not anymore, because we have really grown in the last 2 years, because my sister has challenged me to grow. And that experience with Leslie really made me think about all of the isms that I just walked
Mhm.
through life, because I became a white woman in many ways when I was 17 and dropped down into Houghton, Michigan, because I didn't know how to survive in the tundra of the north
Without assimilating.
and
You
assimilate
assimilated.
and
Yep.
assimilate and assimilate. So I think you mentioned earlier that you don't give a fuck because you know who you are. And Olivia, you say this to me all the time. I'm still on that journey of who I am, because I say this to Olivia, there are a lot of life vests I'm throwing out to like get rid of it. But in that journey is that accepting, yes, this is
Who
the
you
work
are.
you still need to do. I'd say would be the call to action I have to all our listeners. And we have a lot of our dear white friends on this call, and a lot of Indian friends on this call, and everybody in between. So we all got to do the work.
So I think this is interesting. We're going down an interesting path here, but Regina, I would love your perspective because I think um, when you are Black and you live in this country, right? To your point of being self-reflective and thinking about who are you and where are those areas in your life that you probably need to unlearn some things about yourself. I think Black folks in this country, and maybe in other countries as well, maybe even in Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean as well, I think you get taught early, no one is coming to save you.
Absolutely.
You have no
Absolute.
friends. Right?
That's
You
right.
have no friends.
That's right.
No one is coming to save you. If you don't save yourself, I don't know what to tell you because no one is coming to help you. And so Archita and I had this dialogue where she was like, okay, Olivia, you have it all figured out. Like, yeah, you've got it together. The rest of us are on a journey. And I was like, hold on, Archita. Like, I don't want you to walk away with that sentiment because that is a learned behavior for me over time when a whole bunch of undesirable things have happened to me over the course of my life that had me realize I can't care what everybody else thinks, and I can't be
Nope.
looking around for a sympathetic ear because there is not one to be found. I need to focus on myself and figure out how to navigate my environment with my end in mind. And so if someone has this perception of me that works not in my favor, just go around them, right?
Yeah.
Go around them, step right. So I think when I put it back into the framework of the corporate space, right? Regina, I'm going to ask you this question. So for
Yep.
Black women in the corporate space today that may be experiencing this phenomenon where people want to talk about white supremacy, want to talk about, the state of the world, and they come to you, how do you handle those conversations? Because that can be very tricky. It can be very, very tricky in the corporate space. So, what recommendation would you have for Black female leaders in the corporate space that are being tapped to help people do this self reflection themselves, knowing how tricky that can be?
Yeah, if it were me, and I will say, when I retired from the Bell system, I was an executive director, reporting directly to the vice president and general manager of large business sales, large business and government sales. Okay. If it were me, I'd hire a consultant. I would make sure that that was a Black or brown woman. Okay. And I would, because one of the things that I know about a corporate environment is the politics will kill you. You know, it will either drive you out or they will cause you to do self harm where then they need to fire you. So, I personally, I wouldn't take that on.
Mm.
And I did 27 years. I retired with almost 30 years of service and I worked my way up. And it is a very charged for women of color.
I hear you on this. I hear you on this. And again, I'm not a Black woman, of course, as you can see. But the only thing I kind of pulled from that was ERG work, because it's similar. A lot of non white Black and brown women are pulled into conversations to help lead ERG work. And a few years ago, I was under this impression that now I finally have a seat at the table as a leader. I'll get a chance to like shout from the top of my lungs, like to do the work, to change. And I kept pushing, and we had three other women of color on the team. We all three were like, finally, we have women of color on this ERG. Like, hurrah, hurrah. Olivia smiles because she's like, you girls were crazy. But we were like, we're going to make this happen. We're going to see the change we need to see in this workplace, right? So we pushed, we pushed, we pushed. At the end of of the first year, we were all so exhausted. We all left that executive leadership steering committee for the ERGs. And our feedback to the team was, every time we came to them about it needing to be an intersection on race, the pushback from, of course, all our
Hmm.
dear white colleagues was, don't confuse this. You need to focus on something. Let's focus on women. And guess who benefits when you just focus only on
White
women?
women,
White women.
white women.
White women,
Yeah,
white women, white women. And it was becoming exhausting. And so, what would
yeah.
be like, as the work you're doing with corporations right now, as you step into the spaces as a consultant, Regina, what is, what was that?
We are truth tellers, okay?
Yes.
So one of the things we negotiate in our work is we're not here to make white people comfortable, okay? We are not here to hold your hand. We are here to tell you the truth. And what you do with that after that is up to you. So, if you negotiate up front, this is what it's going to be, then I would consider it. But I would say definitely, if you're a woman of color and they're asking you to do this work, hire a consultant, because then you can push the blame off when all the white people are pissed onto the consultant,
Oh
and
gosh.
they are going to get pissed.
They are. My husband
We
was
had
pissed the other day. Sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
when
Regina.
I was at the Bell System, we had Jane Elliott. You guys know who Jane
Yes,
Elliott
of
is?
course.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
had her. They had to give her armed security at the phone company because white dudes wanted to kill her.
Oh my
And
gosh.
this is a little old white lady. Seriously,
Oh my gosh.
seriously. And that's why we don't do white men. People always say, well, why don't you? Okay, first of all, if those suckers wanted to change something, they'd have done it by now. That's number one. Number two, we're not trying to die.
Oh my gosh. God
We
bless you.
are not
I
trying
mean,
to.
we chuckle, but it's a serious
It's the
thing.
truth. Yes,
It is,
they're
but
violent.
it is, and it's
And
kind of,
here's what somebody said, and I think, and I've said this to my husband: how is it that every woman knows somebody who has been sexually assaulted or raped or worse, and no men know anybody who's a sexual abuser?
mm,
They
Well, it's
mm,
don't hold
like
each
they
other accountable.
Of
mm.
course. But I think, Regina, when you think about that, it's the same when you have people that have experienced racism and you have people that haven't, right? It's like we're living on two different planets because the way we view the world is from
Mhm.
different lenses, right?
Yep.
So it's nearly impossible to convince someone that has not experienced what you have experienced that this experience actually exists, right? It's nearly impossible to get people to believe your reality when they have not seen it, felt it, experienced it for
But
themselves.
what they do know is their own privilege. I can honestly say what helped propel me up the corporate ladder is I would look around at these mediocre white dudes and I'd go, well, damn, if he can do it, I know I can do it. And that's what kept me doing, because they get so many privileges that the rest of us don't.
Amen to that. 100%. I believe that. But to the Olivia, to your question there, because I know that Olivia's still on the fence about whether we can actually change people.
I
Is
don't know
that,
if we can change white dudes, and that's why we didn't. No,
mhm.
I would say no. You all are married to them. That's your job.
I know, and that's the question I'm
I
asking.
mean,
It's
and to that point, I'm not trying to change my husband either.
Oh,
You
see,
know what I mean?
I am on a mission because, and we had this insanely intense debate because I was getting ready for this call, and I was like rereading chapters of the book, and then I was just like at him, I was like, that's why you are blah blah blah. And he's like, why do you, and I so this was, so a year and a half ago, it was him and a friend of his, both of them white dudes, sitting at our dinner table. And I was really like going in about racism and everything else, and I was like, white men this, white men that. And his friend stops and says, Archita, that is racist. I'm like, what is racist? Calling them white men. I'm like, what do you mean? And you address this in the book. So I really want us to like unpack this a little bit, because my fear is
Yes.
this is our first episode where we are actually saying out the words white women, calling out white women, saying the word white. And we know on LinkedIn, so many creators have been like, their accounts were deactivated. Saira's account was deactivated because of
Yep.
using the word white. What is our obsession with tying racism to the word white? And how do we, that is something I really feel like, and I think both of you said this in some interview, that if in our lifetimes people are comfortable with calling themselves a white woman or a white man, something to that effect, then our job
That's Syra.
for
That's
the
her
Saira.
objective. And she always says, the objective for white people, the bar is so low it's underground. Mine is a little bit more, I want white people. I should not have to be the victim of racism as well as the person who stops it. I want white people to open their little white mouths when they see shit, call a thing, and stop the violence against people of color. That's my objective. That's what I want to see.
I love that. And so help break that out for us a little bit, Regina. Like at a dinner table, the job that we have to do here with our own. I mean, I know Olivia's not signing up for it. I've signed up for it. Because I can tell you, since a year, my husband this 2 days ago was like, I agree with you. That was ridiculous that I didn't stand up and say something, because I literally was tearing my hair apart trying to. I felt like I didn't have a
Yeah,
voice.
he should have said, dude, we're white.
Exactly. But he had not done the work.
Right.
But this is the thing. He was looking for a cookie the other day, because he was like, I've done the work since then. I'm like, what do you want me to give you? A
Yeah.
standing ovation? I'm like, do more work, because I shouldn't be here having this conversation. But I'm like very aggravated about it. So how do we approach it? Because this is my biggest fear. I am afraid. I'm really like afraid to talk about this book and all of this with my closest, dearest white friends, because I am so afraid what it's going
Well,
to do.
here's what I know. Here's what I know. If they're really your friends, okay, this is what I know. If they're really your friends, they're going to believe you. They're going to accept what you have experienced, and they're going to want to help. If they don't come at you with that, let them go, honey, because they're not real friends.
Mm-hmm.
Regina, I 100% agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
like my head's getting ready to pop off over here because I 100% agree with you. And I think this is my hesitation in fixing people, right? Like my job is not to fix you. That is your job, is to fix you, right? So even when we talk about our spouses, my job is not to convince Dan that my reality is real. That is not my job. I'm supposed to live. And whether he wants to recognize my reality is real or not is up to him, right? And I will tell you, when we first started to date, keep in mind we're both military leaders, right? We got together as we transitioned.
My father was career military, so I lived on military bases till I was 16 years old.
So you know the mentality, right? So the mentality is it's firmly in your mind, okay?
Yeah.
So from there, we used to start having these conversations before we got together as a couple, and he would argue with me. He's like, racism doesn't exist. Black people exaggerate. It's not that bad. And of course he would say those things because he's never experienced it. Regina, I would not part my mouth to argue with him. Why? For what? That's wasted energy. All that's going to do is aggravate me, right? And make me feel like I'm being gaslit. So fast forward, we've been together now for over a decade. Over that time, Regina, I will tell you, he has had his own fair share of experiences by just being adjacent to me. right?
Mhm. Yep.
So now, after 10 years of having experiences, when I tell you, if someone parts their mouth to say something stupid, Dan is like to the point where I'm like, oh my God, like, why did you just go at that person like that? I'm embarrassed. Don't embarrass me in public. Yo, he is more on, and that took not a conversation from me. And
That,
so
well,
I'm
and I think that's what we want. That's what I want to see from people. And here's what I know: people who care about you tell you the things that you need to hear.
yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah, but so with that, I'm like, I need you to hear that you need to do better. So that's where my head's at. I'm like, I'm on this education journey because I'm like, if you don't speak up, if you don't have a conversation about it, if you don't
Yeah,
engage in discourse about it, you're never going to understand. Because you mentioned this in the book, a lot of our white friends have a white community that they're surrounded with. They have a
they
few
live in a bubble.
individuals, and
They
it's a
live in a
bubble.
white bubble.
The closest
Yeah.
bubble is a bubble of sameness, right?
I want both of you all to join our network and your callers too. I put it in there. If you go to Mighty Networks, we have a Race to Dinner Connect. It's free for women of color. White women have to pay, okay? But join that network and you will just be immersed in dozens of great conversations, people, and you will see people doing the work.
I love it. I love it because I'm a believer. People, and I'm going to say it out loud to others as well. So, Race to Dinner has a connect called Mighty Network. They also offer a course called Race to Self Actualization for Black, Indigenous, and other non white women. Would you like to share a little bit about that, Regina, about the self?
Yeah, that's where you learn to not give a fuck. That's where you
Mm.
learn to put your life plan in place. These are the things I value. These are the things I want to do, be, and have in my life. These are the things. So we put that whole life plan together. So when you walk out of that course, and it's like a 5-week course, you know who you are because you have just spent 5 weeks coming up with that, designing it.
Love
I
it.
love that. And I encourage our listeners to join that course because I will tell you, especially if you're a woman of color in the corporate space, this is the number one question that people struggle with. Who are you? What do you want? And why do you want it? If you can answer those questions, the sky is absolutely the limit, and
Yep.
you have reduced the possibility of someone else defining your identity for you. And there is power in that. So I definitely recommend that. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of women of color struggle with this. White women struggle with it as well. So everyone can benefit from really doing the work to understand who you are so that the world doesn't define you.
And what I love is that when you are operating out of values, this is what we see in our politicians. They're not operating out of values. When you operate out of values, there is never a question about what you're going to do. Somebody asked Syra, I think one time, if the roles were switched, would she treat white people the way they treat us? And she said, probably. She said, but I don't think Regina's gonna, because I operate out of values. I know who I am, and my values are not situational. They are who I am in my life.
Yes. Well, this thing was directed right at me here. I'm going to be like, I've done so much work on this. I have my values up here: family, accountability, impact, respect, and integrity. Those are my values
Yes.
there. But the reality is, and my why: inspire action, influence change, drive out inequities. But it's this fire to drive out inequities that gets me into trouble with my sense of self a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because it's like, because I think when you're doing your own work of like anti-racism work, you question like, do I understand this well enough to be standing here and speaking about this? And
Well, it's always
experience.
learning. You're always, always, always learning. There is never a time in your life when you're not learning, especially if it's the work you do and love. You know, I read something every day that I goes, oh, didn't know that. As a matter of fact, I'll share with you one. I did not know that the Filipinos were the first farm workers, that when Filipinos went on strike, the country brought in Mexicans to do that work.
Oh,
Did you
yes.
all know that?
Yes,
I
I
did
do.
not know that.
Yes, there's a huge
See there?
Chicana community in the Philippines to this
Yep.
day because of that. And yes, I know that because of, really, I'm ashamed to say this, but Too Hot to Handle, which is a show
Oh,
on
yes.
Netflix.
All right.
But there was a
Well, so
girl.
you're always learning.
You're
You're
always learning.
always learning. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. Well, Regina, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like so many other directions we could go on this, but I will be absolutely joining the Mighty Network. I'm going to be looking at
Thank
the race to self actualization. It's a perfect time
Okay.
in my life and season of my life, because if not now, when? Uh,
Yes.
right? And I'd encourage our listeners to do the same. And to all of my dear white friends and colleagues listening in, I'm here to help you as you're doing the work and to have those conversations.
Yes. Have the tough conversations, especially with people you know, you like, you respect. So, start there because those are the people who are going to give you your space. They're going to believe your stories. They're going to support you. Start there.
Absolutely.
Agreed. So lovely having you on, Regina.
Thank
I
you.
might become a little bit of an internet stalker here. I think you're definitely someone I want to keep in the network. And much like Archita, I definitely want to join your program. To your point, you can never have enough knowledge. We have to be continuous learners as we're all on this journey of evolution here. So
Yeah.
thank you for everything that you are both doing to enrich our collective communities. And thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank you for having me. And next time, I hope we can have Syra because her and I talk shit to each other and we love it. So I look forward to being back with Syra.
Yes, I'm going to actually send an email about it, and I'm going to ask for another date here, because I know y'all are really busy. Y'all are all over.
Well, let me know when it's going to be posted or send me a copy of the
Yes,
link so I can put it on our network.
absolutely. No, thank you. So the goal is to get it out next week, but I'll send you an email. I'll copy Saira in as well with all of the
Wonderful.
details.
And it was lovely meeting both of you. And, you guys start with your spouses because those are the people who love you. So start with them and start having the tough conversations, Olivia. Okay? Have the tough conversation.
Ah, yes.
Listen, my actions speak for themselves. Dan is evolving. If he wasn't, maybe this would be a
Okay.
different story. But yes,
Okay. And that's the goal. We all are here to evolve, right?
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. Love you guys.
Love you too. Thank
Love
you so
you.
much. Really appreciate
Okay.
you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.